All right, I'll do the introductions first, for our
Okay.
viewers. We have we're at the Author Shout Out podcast, which is hosted by International Writers Inspiring Change, which you know about. We've featured your
Mm.
book and done a review on it, and we're interviewing David Huntley from. Are you in Texas now?
Yeah, for the last 46 years.
As if you
As
just
I,
recently arrived, right? So my
as
question.
as I say in my World War II talks, last Friday I gave one to 500 veterans of organization I go to, which is Roll Call. And in my introduction, I was the guest speaker that day, and I always say that I may have a slightly different accent, but I can assure you that I am bilingual because I can say y'all, because
Y'all,
that's how the Texans speak here.
yeah, because you're British by origin, but
Oh
a
yeah,
trans
yeah,
moved over
yeah,
to America.
yeah.
All right,
It was England and then Africa for 20 odd years, and then America. Yeah,
you've been around the world, David.
quite a bit. Yeah,
Well, we're going to be talking about I mean, we did a podcast with you. Actually, you were one of the
yeah.
first people we did the podcast with. That was about was
Uh,
March or April last
I think
earlier this year.
it was either a year ago or earlier this year. I can't remember
Yeah, I
exactly.
think it was earlier this year. We talked about because that's it was shortly after your book came out, The Tomahawk Warrior.
Uh-huh. Mhm.
So we're going to do just a follow up on that and just see what's
Yeah,
happened and what's transpired in the last 8, 10 months since we last
yeah,
talked to you. Why don't you start by just telling us a bit more about you so that any viewers who don't know you, they know
sure.
who you are.
Yeah, I went through the London Blitz during the war, and my late wife was under Nazi occupation in France in the war as well. So we have together we had quite a lot of experience of wartime as more or less as school children, really. I
Mm.
was a schoolboy in London. I used to walk to school in my Mickey Mouse gas mask, which I had to carry. We never had to wear it. But if we did wear it, it would scare every cat in the neighborhood. It was so ugly
Why was it called the Mickey Mouse mask? Was it just a
because it looked
nickname?
like a Mickey Mouse. It was, you had ears and all kinds of things.
Really? Yeah.
But it was ugly. It was terribly ugly.
Okay.
And then for lunch, I would have bread and dripping to take to school, which was that's just plain bread with the fat from the previous roast of the weekend, sprinkled with pepper and salt, wrapped in newspaper, which
Well,
we'd
that was the
put in our
rations at the
pocket.
time, though.
Yeah, because you never had fancy boxes or anything of that kind in those days. You just wrapped it
Mhm.
in newspaper. Newspaper was utilized for everything, including toilet paper. Um, we would select, of course, the most appropriate pictures of Hitler and Goering for for the lavatory. Uh,
Ah, that's good to know.
yeah,
That's
and yeah, so there's a lot of experiences there which I relate in my talks and PowerPoint presentation that I have.
mm.
And
Do you do PowerPoint about the book, or do you
no,
go broader on the whole scene?
actually, what happens is up on the screen comes the two books that I have.
Mm.
And then I introduce myself and I indicate that what I'm about to do is to give you a summary of these two books. And from the summary, I will then tell you why I dedicate all my books to World War II veterans for saving the world from tyranny. And then I relate all my experiences with lots of pictures of V1s, V2 rockets, and bombed out buildings, my experiences as a schoolboy in London during the Blitz. And then I branch off at the end towards my late wife, and I got a lot of pictures of the what we call the Exodus which is in French called the Exode, in which millions of French people, including my wife and her family, who had to flee from the Germans as they invaded. And then you see lots of pictures and so on and so on.
And that must be just a fascinating piece of history that you've got recorded there.
Oh yeah, I mean, people, there's stuff that I show that people don't even know or have never heard of. Like for instance,
Do you do this to, you do it obviously for veterans, but you do it, have you done it to
I do
schools?
it. I do it all over the place. I do it all over Texas.
What's the reaction from younger people, the younger
There,
generation?
there are more and more younger people who are fascinated and very interested in World War II. Not as many as I would like, or you would like,
Mm,
but certainly there is an increasing interest on the part of younger people, so that it doesn't become a myth. Um, Over time, as you know, very little is taught in the schools, nothing.
that's right.
And so it's not the difference between America and Europe, for example. In Europe, it's installed in the kids at a young age
That's
that
right.
they are there simply because of the allies, Americans and allies, who saved that continent from tyranny. And those kids become sort of ambassadors themselves. Now, there is a young lady here in the States. Her name is Liberty Phillips. You might want to look it up.
Liberty Phillips?
Liberty Phillips.
Huh?
And she has a charity which is called Operation Meatball, but she has dedicated herself to recognizing World War II veterans. But there is now a subsidiary because those veterans are all dying off. She now has a subsidiary charity called Bridge to History. And that Bridge to History is in where she gets young people all over the United States to write an essay. And she selects so many of those, 5 or 6 or 7 of those essays. And on that selection, she will then take those kids to England and to France. She would take them to Normandy, where they have a week or 2 weeks induction into what actually happened in Europe. And they meet all their French counterparts. And when they come back, they're expected to become ambassadors for the purpose of spreading the word of
Mm.
what we did in Europe to save Europe.
I mean, it's so important because,
Yeah,
like you mentioned, it becomes a myth, or it becomes almost forgotten about, if not even redacted down to just a short statement
exactly.
about, yeah, we fought Hitler, and
Yeah.
it's so much more than that.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. When I show my house in London, and how when the raids came, we go in the cellar underneath the house. We also had a Morrison shelter. What's a Morrison shelter? No one's ever heard of a Morrison shelter. It's a steel sort of cage which the government issued, and you have it in your living room. It's got a thick steel slab on top, and you have a tablecloth on that. You eat on that, and you can have kids sleeping underneath. And the sides are covered in wire mesh to prevent, if the house collapses, this thing can withstand enough weight from a rubble of a house. Many people never even heard of a Morrison shelter. They've all heard of Anderson shelter, which we had one of those in the garden, but those were not particularly effective or safe, but
Oh,
they were some sort of protection. But we had a cellar, and I give a lot of anecdotes about us boys with our shrapnel collection, and we'd go in bombed out buildings. I show pictures of a scooter that we would make out of planks of old wood with ball bearing races. And these were our scooters. They used to make a hell of a noise on the street, but
Did your
um,
house ever get hit or come close to
no,
being hit?
no, we had close. There's a house that got hit across the street. I show a picture of all the bombs that fell on London, illustration of all the bombs. And then I show the bombs that fell around my house, the high explosives, and also how many of the incendiary bombs. Um, and people look at it, wow. Yeah. Uh, so, and
It's it's
I describe the noise of the ack guns nearby, and the barrage balloons and the searchlights and the bombs falling. And then later on in the war, the V1s and
yeah, of
V2s are
course,
coming.
the V1s.
Yeah.
But yeah, you kind of bring something to mind too. I mean, when you talk to people about this, about World War II and the anecdotes and having been there, does it seem like it doesn't quite connect, like it's still going over their head, like it's not real to them
Uh, to some extent, maybe, but I think that I give it enough drama to
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 connect?
to get there, because I don't just say, well, this happened or this happened. I tell them, look, 43,000 of my fellow Londoners died in the Blitz. Think about that, 43,000. Of those, 17,000 were women and children.
Mhm. Yeah, sobering.
And then people think, well, aren't all the children evacuated? No, it wasn't obligatory. I was evacuated for about 2 or 3 weeks because I hated it where I was. It was terrible. And my father, he was in both world wars. He had been in World War One, but he was young enough to get called up in the Second World War. And as a result, um, he was not too happy about me being evacuated anyway. So he came and picked me up because he had missed me. He was wounded and evacuated at Dunkirk.
Okay.
So he wanted his kids nearby. So, of course, there were many, many thousands that were evacuated, but there were several thousand that weren't. I used to go to school. I walked to school every day uh, and would meet my fellow little kids at school, and we would talk about all the latest shrapnel that we'd collected, or make jokes about the war or something. Um, yeah, it's a different life.
When I ask a personal question here, I mean, I know that as kids, they probably rebound faster than adults, and certainly people who have been in the war and fought the war. But for you, does it have any kind of traumatic effects still? Is there anything that lingers for
Only,
you?
well, of course, to some extent, yes. There was a house across the road that got blown away, which is now replaced by a block of flats. So it's completely different from the buildings all around.
Right.
But that house, I was pretty upset, not because I saw the elderly people being dragged out, two man and wife, elderly, and they had blood coming out their ears or whatever. So I'd seen that before at other places
Mm.
in London. So that was not sort of uncommon, and you begin to know you're living in an order. This is just a normal
Yeah.
thing that's happening.
Yeah.
However, what upset me was the dog of that house died.
Hey.
I was very upset about the dog because I used to play with that dog.
And
And
the
so,
dog was in the house when the bomb hit.
yeah. So consequently, um, that as a school boy was more upsetting for me And so children are looking at this kind of life in a different way to adults. Adults are scared because they see things in much more real time than what children are fantasizing about everything. You know, we're playing, we've got toy tanks and we got toy airplanes. And in the cellar, by the way, we had a blowtorch, and that blowtorch we used to melt lead, and we would pour that lead into molds for making toy soldiers. My job as the youngest of the three boys, I had an elder brother and another stepbrother who's a little bit older, and myself. And there were others in the family. But us three boys were down there making these toy soldiers with molten lead, with blowtorch and everything. And of course, there's plenty of lead because the roofs are made of lead. There's lead pipes everywhere.
Right.
And my job is to sandpaper the joints of the toy soldiers as they come out the mold. And then I had to paint them. Well, of course, the paint was probably lead too, but but I'm still here.
Lead explosion. Yeah, you did well. You survived
Yeah.
the lead. Well, give us just a brief again for new viewers who are going to be hearing about the book. Tell us in short version
Yeah.
what the story is about.
Okay. So gone through the whole Blitz, and it's now July 1944.
Mm.
And we've got all these V1 rockets coming, and now there's this threat of the V2. So my father felt that us three younger boys of the family, we should be sent outside of London to an aunt's cottage in a little village just north of London. Um, so we were sent out, and at this cottage, uh, we were there July, and then August, only 1 month later, I just survived the whole blitz of London for 4 years. All of a sudden, over our cottage, at a very, very low level, almost crashing on our roof, was what I didn't know at the time was a B-17 American bomber. The noise and the vibration of the building was just phenomenal. We just thought this thing was coming down on us. But it actually crashed 30 seconds later, 30 to 40 seconds. So it crashed about 1.5 miles away. But when it did, the whole thing exploded. It was full of gasoline, it full of bombs. It was trying to get into formation to bomb a target in Versailles in France. So when it exploded, us boys, having been more or less thrown out of bed, we felt this could be another good source of shrapnel for our collection. I mean, that's how you were thinking.
Of course.
So we leapt out of bed and we ran the 1.5 miles up the hills, across the fields, over the styes, and we kept following the smoke. And when we got to the area where the plane crashed, it was the most devastating thing. I've got pictures of it, and you can't determine anything that it's a plane, nothing. And we saw auxiliary. It took us about 20 to 30 minutes to get there. But in the meantime, an auxiliary crew had arrived and were picking up the body parts. And when I say the
Already.
body,
Wow.
and when I say the body parts, they were picking up bits of arms and legs and putting them in these galvanized bins that they were holding. And it was that image that virtually remained with me all my life, because I'd seen the sort of bodies being taken out of bombed out buildings, but I'd never seen anything like this,
Mm.
bits and pieces. And in 2016, I had, in the meantime, had told my wife and children that I had seen a plane crash in 1944, blah, blah, blah. And then I discovered uh, a website which was the 398 Bomb Group website, memorial website, where that plane had come from. And they had a
That was the
story.
squadron, the 398, right?
The say, yeah, the 398 was the bomb group, and the 600 squadron was the plane that was a part of the 600 squadron of that bomb group.
Okay.
And they had written a little story about it, the crash. But uh, that story had a lot of inconsistencies and historical errors and all kinds of things. But anyway, I just reposted it on my website. And out of the blue, I got a call from the granddaughter of the pilot. So then I asked her, "Is your mother still alive?" And she said, "Yes." So this was now the daughter of the pilot, and I was able to make contact with her. And that was the beginning of writing the whole story. Um, and I managed to trace three other families of that crew. There was
And
one member.
you were able to piece together the story from that then.
Yeah, I was able to. It took 7 years of actual research with declassified operational documents from the Air Force and all kinds of things. Um, so one of and as I say in my talks, I tell people, when you buy this book, you're not buying a post-mortem of machinery
Mm,
like we normally read about a propeller that's stuck in the ground and somebody finds it, they link it to something else or so. I said, no, you're going to read a story of love, compassion, sacrifice, so many emotional things that you won't want to put it down. And they don't.
no,
Everyone who reads this book finds
yeah,
it absolutely fascinating.
as an emotional. I mean, I read the book, as you know,
Yeah.
and I
Yeah.
found it. I was totally fascinated with it. And I was
Yeah.
both the emotional impact, like you said, because it is a story about life and love. It's not just
Yeah.
war, but
Absolutely.
the descriptions of being in the in the plane and what these
Mm.
guys were thinking and what they were going through and the experience of shrapnel and
Yeah.
bullets coming through the fuselage and all this stuff, I was like, oh my God, this is amazing.
Yeah. And the
Because it was so
temperature
real.
of minus 50 degrees. They're all in these heated suits, praying that those suits don't the electricity keeps going and keeps them alive.
That's right.
They're all in sub-zero temperatures at 28,000 feet. um, but apart from that, also, they only had a 70% chance of coming back alive on each and every mission. A 70% chance. There's a 30% chance that they will not make it. This is where it gets a bit shocking. Also, there was one member of that crew. His name is Frank Snyder, and that crew member, that was the most emotional chapter that I wrote because he was the tail gunner and he was not on that plane when it crashed. This was called, eventually in the story over the many years, this was called the Frank Snyder mystery. Well, I helped solve that mystery by finding this guy. Although he had already died, I found his story and why and what happened. And it's a remarkable, that is the most emotional chapter because this guy had served on 28 of those total missions. 28 of them he'd been on there. And yet, um,
He
his grave,
survived.
his grave in California is in a Catholic cemetery and it's just a small stone in the ground in this Catholic cemetery. And my contention is that this man deserves every bit a national, the Arlington National Cemetery burial, just as the others received for their heroics.
I mean, to survive 28 missions and what he accomplished in those 28 missions.
Yeah, he deserved as much as these other guys. But
well,
there was
we
a
won't ask
mystery.
you to say more about it, so we don't have a spoiler on the book.
No,
right?
we don't want to spoil it. But read the book, and you will be staggered by this
Well, I
story.
recommend the book too. All right, that's the basic storyline, and of course, the book is a fascinating narrative on the lives and what happened to these people. And what's the update on the book now? I mean, you've been out talking about it for the last almost a year now. Is it getting more recognition?
We got a lot of recognition. Of course, the fact that it's a self-published book and self-marketed, I do well whenever I speak, and I sell lots of books. But from a national standpoint, the fact that it's not a nationally published book with a, recognized publisher, it doesn't have the coverage that I feel it needs, because the recognition of it is phenomenal. You take, for instance, this book. This last Friday, Major General Hansen, who wrote the 3-page foreword to that book,
right?
He's from the Pentagon. He flew from the Pentagon to Fort Worth on Friday to introduce me as the guest speaker.
Wow.
I was really honored that he would do that. But he is so entranced by this book that's why he did it. But even before that, when I wrote the full manuscript, and he was going to be, he offered to be to write the foreword, it had to get approval, because you can't have a serving general endorsing a commercial book.
I see.
So I submitted the whole manuscript to the United States Air Force Public Affairs in Colorado. They read the book, they gave it a case number, and they gave General Hansen permission to write that book, to write the foreword.
That's nice.
So that in itself is
that's major recognition right there.
Major recognition. In addition to that, some of the other endorsers, like for instance, Lucky Luckadoo. Major Lucky Luckadoo was he was a friend of mine, but he was the pilot in the 100th bomb group, what they call the Bloody 100th bomb group. It was a very famous bomb group. They were virtually decimated when they were trying to bomb Germany without very much protection. And Lucky Luckadoo survived all that. And he was when he wrote the endorsement to my book, he was 102 years old. But not only that, he was also the advisor to Spielberg and Hans in the Masters of the Air TV series.
Right, which was an excellent series. I saw that.
Yeah, so this, and Lucky Luckadoo said that my book is a Herculean effort. So then, in addition, because I had done some research which turned up some very unique information about Joseph P. Kennedy, who died on the same day in his air crash as the Tomahawk Warrior. But there was a link between them. And I discovered what that link was. And as a result, the JFK Library in Boston wanted my book in their collection because that was little information they'd never heard of. So that is now my book is now available for scholars and historians to read in the JFK Library. In
That's
addition,
great.
the
But
same thing.
that's a great way of honoring these men too, you
Oh,
know.
yeah, absolutely. Their story is now told in a much wider frame than what it would be just through me. But also it's now an official document, World War II historic document, with the Imperial War Museum in London in the research
Okay.
library room.
Well, you made some
Um,
serious inroads in the last year.
but yeah, so it's got that, and then um, I, I suppose I can tell you.
I'm
Let's
going
just
to tip your
say,
cards here.
no, let me just say, uh, a former United States president who's read my book and wrote me a personal letter thanking me for bringing this story to life. I won't mention his name because um, I, I've got a letter from him. I'm not allowed to sort of display it or anything like that. So I'm a little reticent to say his name, but I'm very proud of the fact that a former United States president um, has in so he read my book and he's thankful that I brought this story to life.
Well, congratulations on that too.
Yeah,
I mean, you know, I think it has to go with it has to be said that the importance of uh, telling history the way history actually happened, you know, the facts
yeah,
and what
mm,
people really went through. I think that is so critical, and
yeah.
that that's part of our job as authors is not to, is to make sure that people don't forget that past because
Exactly. Yeah,
there are so many
yeah.
valuable lessons to be learned from that, and obviously. The world hasn't learned this lesson yet about wars. We're
Ah,
continuing that
yeah,
stupidity, like as if
yeah.
it's you know
They just repeat the same
yeah,
mistakes
same
over and
mistakes are
over.
being made, and we have dictators again, and we have
Yeah,
warmongers, and it.
yeah,
So, yeah, I mean, my hat is off to you, David, for really
mm,
putting this book on the map.
yeah. Well, thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah.
What kind of influences do you, well, with the family or like people who have read the book, what kind of, besides the obvious recognition, influences, how has it impacted people?
Most people um, say to me that they find the story is very compelling while they're reading it, that they have a really difficult time putting it down. Because as you probably can know, I write in a way that you're there with me
Yeah, exactly.
in the book, and I write that way, and so people have said they can't wait for the next page to see what's going to happen next. Um,
You know, one doesn't feel like a spectator when you're reading the book. You feel like you're
well,
right there
that's
in
what
the,
I try to. That's how I try to write all my books.
yeah,
Even
no.
the first one that I wrote, which was historical fiction, it's based on true events, and that story is really quite remarkable because if you read some of the stuff, you can go and Google some of it, and you'll see all the things that I write about are completely factual. In fact, the the one guy who endorsed my book was Mike Baker, ex-CIA officer, who's on
He endorsed
TV.
that book, that other book.
My first book, yeah,
Yeah. What's the title of that book? So we have it on.
Death Watch Beetle, a post World War II historical spy thriller,
Okay.
and it's chasing a Nazi who disappeared at the end of the war. His name is He was a SS officer called Kamler. He was in charge of all the super weapons, but he disappeared, and I postulate where he ended up. Uh, but yeah, that Mike Baker said the book is factual, accurate. You can't put it down. And of course, I always make a quip in my speeches. Well, you can't put it down unless you buy it first. Bit of a Cockney humor comes up here. You can't help it.
Exactly. Keeping up the flare.
Yeah, right.
What's coming down the road? What's any? I don't know if you have more books coming or what's
No,
the plan? You
nothing
just keep
really.
lecturing?
I I um I just spend my time trying to market this thing,
Yeah.
telling my story. Um, I'll be 90 years old next year, so got to. Uh, I don't think I could write. Yeah, I've had a very varied life. I could write a
You
pretty
could write
complex
something.
story, but it would be just about me. You know, uh, so what?
Yeah, I understand.
There would there wouldn't be any purpose to it, I don't think.
No, I mean, again, it's a fascinating story. I'm going to have to make a note here to read the other one,
Yeah,
the
it's
first
not of
book.
such the other one I wrote 2012, 2013.
Mm.
Uh, I wasn't happy with the publisher, and I took it away from the publisher, and then I republished in 2014 or 16. I can't remember now.
You
Uh,
self-published it.
yeah,
Yeah.
and it's not
Well, we have
quite
to say
it's
we have to say one thing here about self-publishing because at IWIC here at International we have a lot of authors that are self-published authors,
yeah,
and um, while everybody would like to be represented by one of the biggies,
yeah.
um, the self-publishing world has opened the door to many voices that would
Oh,
never
yeah,
otherwise have been able to get out there. So
exactly.
uh,
I won 4 international awards, of course. I got the Grand Titan, what they call it, the gold book. The
yeah.
Chanticleer, I got the first prize for the nonfiction military books, readers' favorites, etc. I got a highly recommended book from your organization and a wonderful review because I have to commend you for your ability to be able to see things in a book which very often people miss in terms of the insight, the real deep insight into the actual um, soul of the book. And
Right.
you you guys, in that sense, really saw something that I felt was very important.
Well, thank you for that. Well, I don't know. I think what we have to do, I think this book is going to get a lot of traction, obviously, and
Yeah,
I don't think you're going to continue to be called on, I'm sure, for more lectures. But
yeah. I've got an email today asking me if I would make a presentation to some church here in Texas. So there'll be. I've got a. I've got some scheduled, or even September of next year. I got one scheduled. So yeah, there'll be more, and I just say my thing.
uh, well, I think your voice is very important, David. You've really done a spectacular job here. Um, and I'm just going to say here that I would love to be able to pick this up maybe like in 8, 10 months down the road and just sort of do a catch-up podcast and see where you got
See,
it to then.
see if there's something new or something
Something new.
old.
But it's also just fascinating because, like you said, there's so much that you have.
Yeah,
And the depth of that story is, I mean, you encapsulated it in 4 minutes.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, I didn't tell you lots of stories about the time
Yeah,
in London. There's plenty of those. Like we had
oh, I
two
would love to
spins.
sit down with a glass of Guinness with you and just listen.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you can keep the Guinness and I'll stick to Scotland. Um, yeah, we had two spinsters, elderly spinsters,
Uh,
living next door to us. And one night they were flashing their lights on and off. This is in the middle of a raid. It was that, so my father's outside as a fire warden. So he gets my eldest stepbrother. He was in the Navy or was just joining the Navy. He gets my eldest stepbrother, and they broke down the door of the two Spencers. And they went in the house and they took all the fuses out. And then they reported them to the authorities, but nothing happened because the old Spencers were a bit cuckoo. And so they didn't do anything to them. But that was a hairy story at the time. Could you
Unbelievable.
imagine the bloody bombs are falling and these lights are flashing on and off is a big target for the Germans.
Maybe they were doing suicide by Germans or something.
Or something of that kind, but I never really found out. Anyway.
David, it's really been great talking to you on
Yeah,
the
thank
podcast.
you, Real. It's nice talking to you too.
We'll post the podcast, this one to our podcast page, and so you can refer your viewers
Yeah,
to that. It'll always be
yeah,
there.
sure.
We'll also send you a copy of the podcast.
Thank you. Yeah, that's good. I can put that in my archives of files, and I can send it to people who ever need that kind of information. Yeah, yeah, it's
Yeah,
good.
sure. Absolutely. Or I'll
Yeah,
refer them to the page and they can look at it on the podcast
yeah,
page.
right.
Well, I look forward to talking to you again sometime in the future.
Yeah, me too. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
All right.
You're a good listener.
Well, thank you. You're a good talker.
That's what a lot of people say. You're a bloody good talker.
All right, David,
Well,
have a great week.
yeah, and you too. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
All right. See you later.
Bye for now. Bye.